Hello, it's so good to have you with us here at Leadership for Sustainability. This is the podcast where we share our experience to help you draw on the best in human nature and work with the rest of nature so your sustainability initiatives deliver results and make a real difference in the world. I'm Osbert Lancaster, longtime sustainability coach, consultant and trainer, and co-founder of Realise Earth. What are the key skills that you need to create change, build relationships, and bring people with you when you're leading on sustainability in your organization? To take us through these skills, I'm joined today by Realise Earth co-founder Richard Proffitt. Rich doesn't just draw on his experience of leading on sustainability at PepsiCo. He also talks about his research into sustainability leadership while studying his master's at Ashridge. Rich, what led you to doing that research? Why did you feel it was so important?
Every time I was presented with a corporate competency model, I was just like, oh, this is so tedious. It's just like not me. It didn't feel authentic to me, my passion, what I was trying to work for. And it just didn't seem relevant. And so I was thinking, well, there's got to be more than that. And that's where, as at Ashridge, I came across the idea of relational practice and these different dimensions and aspects of skill sets that are softer skill sets that are common in actually creating change and building relationships and taking people with you. And these things are actually successful through soft skills, not hard skills and knowledge and technical expertise. So that's really where it started from. And as a team trying to affect change within PepsiCo, what we regularly did was held retrospectives or debriefs where we were picking apart, well, what worked, what didn't work. And if we've created an intervention or an idea for a change, why didn't that work? And where it did work, it was like, well, why was that one different? That's successful when something else failed. And what we started finding was when things were successful, there's a common set of factors. And in all those cases, the things that we identified were the soft skills that made the difference, not the technical expertise or the knowledge or the hierarchy, power dynamics and stuff. It was those soft skills of engaging and really that commitment and the collaboration and things. And so we started to pull out and identify what those soft skills were. And lo and behold, the things that we were identifying, the research backed up. I was looking at people like Joyce Fletcher and Patricia Shaw's work and Dexter Dunphy's work. There was these consistent themes coming up, which was also being mirrored in what we were actually practically seeing on the ground. And so the research I was doing kind of coalesced with what we were seeing on the ground. And bluntly, looping it back to those competency models, these soft skills that we were identifying felt completely authentic to me and natural, more about being human rather than an artificial set of competencies that you define success by something artificial that someone's imposed on you, rather than defining success on allowing your innate human nature and competency to emerge and flourish. And so that's really what was behind it all. And it seemed to me, from a competency perspective, that if you can harness and encourage and promote innate skills that sit within somebody and get them to be successful and powerful in their role with what's innate within them, it seems much better than saying the only way you can succeed in an organization is ticking these 5 things that someone from Harvard or Boston Consulting Group has said are important to this organization, as opposed to what's important to you for you to be successful in your role. It just felt a much more authentic approach to leadership competency.
So at Realise Earth, the last few years, we've been using the sustainability leadership skill set that you developed in our programs, but we've recently switched to using the inner development goals. Not surprisingly, it turns out they're very similar. And the reason we've switched is because they just have recognition globally. I'll just say a bit about where the framework comes from. Is that the inner development goals have been developed by a team of international researchers. Really what they were coming from was realizing that in order to tackle these increasingly complex environmental and social challenges to achieve the sustainable development goals, the framework they've come up with is this idea of there are 5 main dimensions and a number of skills and qualities that are especially crucial for leaders who are working on the sustainable development goals. So rather than digging further into the framework that you created, let's jump now to the inner development goals framework. So maybe you could talk us through that framework from a perspective of leading a sustainability team. Give us an overview and then pick out some of those skills and attributes that you believe are most important.
Of course, not surprising, the IDGs are similar to my work. I think some of the authors of IDG were some of the authors I studied back at the time. Peter Senge and Otto Sharma and the like were all part of my research back during my master's program anyway. And it's broken down effectively into 5 dimensions, which look at different aspects of your sort of skill set. And within those 5, there's 23 sort of skills or qualities that come together to form each of those dimensions. So the first one is being, a sense of being, which is really driven around a relationship with yourself. And this becomes really important because from that purpose and passion perspective, you need to have a real good grasp and understanding of who you are so that you can be authentic with yourself and use that as a source of power for your interventions and work that you're going to do. Within that sort of sense of being and relationship with yourself, there's skills and qualities such as having an inner compass, that sort of moral leadership in terms of what is right and what is wrong, and having a strong sense of what that is becomes quite important. And actually it affects other aspects in terms of whether your instinct is indicating whether something is appropriate or inappropriate. There's also integrity with yourself, so that you kind of have a sense of to what extent you're having to compromise your own morals or values in pursuit of creating the change, but having that sense and that barometer of how much you're having to balance. Having an open learning mindset becomes important, being open to different possibilities. And then there's that broad general sort of self-awareness piece that this stuff all coalesces around. And also what Peter Senge and Otto Sharma call presence, and they've written a good book about it called Presence. But presence is effectively being in the here and now and being present with whatever's going on and sort of letting go of judgment and prejudgment and reactive thinking, and it all comes together as this way of being within an organization. That was quite wordy in terms of one of the dimensions this form was.
That's the first dimension, being, yeah. Relationship to self. Okay.
Yeah, let's speed up. Okay, I mean, the second dimension is thinking and cognitive skills. So this is possibly more traditional and conventional to what we're used to, and most of our education systems around the world are based on developing cognitive skills. So this includes things like critical thinking, perspective skills, sense making, and long-term orientation and visioning. Now, I think within this, there is another one which is around complexity awareness. And this is possibly taking us into the post-conventional. A lot of this work that we do takes into account complexity, and that actually the interrelationships between things is incredibly complicated and complex. And so having an awareness of that complexity becomes important. Often it can become a source of overwhelm because these things are so complex. So with complexity comes the need to develop comfort with uncertainty, because these things are more complex than you can probably comprehend. So you have to be uncertain or comfortable with the uncertainty of actually not knowing what's going to happen. And there's a really strong realization that needs to take place with most people is they can't actually control everything. And to think you can is a myth. So you need to be comfortable with the idea that we don't necessarily know what's going to happen, but that's okay. And at the same time, creating interventions, you can use that to your advantage. You don't know what's going to happen, so actually you can try a little intervention, which might grow and escalate into something bigger and more powerful. Right, I'm going to move on because there's loads. Relating. So this is about relationships with others. So it's caring for more than yourself. So this is a relationship with your peers, your community, your other team members, the rest of the organization. But it goes beyond human relationships as well. And it goes into the natural environment, the ecosystem that you're operating in, having a care for the natural environment, for the organisms and the animals that you share the planet with, the interrelationship that exists between organisms and animals, all become relevant and important to you, and should be important to the organization, because there's very little in this world that happens without a healthy relationship with nature. And if we have an unhealthy relationship with nature or a damaged relationship with nature, it's only going to come back and punish us in one way or another. But these things include skills and qualities such as appreciation, a sense of connectedness, empathy and compassion for those other things. But it also includes humility, accepting that humans or yourself within that context is not actually the most important thing here. And letting go of that sense of individualistic and species ego that is probably over dominant in a lot of our cultural paradigms at the moment. Right, collaboration skills is the next one. These are sort of social skills. So this, again, is things people are probably familiar with. There's things like communication skills, building trust, mobilization skills to take others with you, creating enthusiasm and a movement, but also includes co-creation skills. So this is the idea where actually a team of people can co-create solutions that will be more effective than if it's designed, developed by an individual leader who has responsibility for developing a strategy. Why would one person have all the answers when a team of 5 or 10 don't? And actually, I think you're more likely to find solutions and answers by drawing on the experience and collective wisdom of 10 people than you are just relying on one person. But also communication skills, coming back to that, I think what becomes important with communication skills, it isn't communication skills. The real power in this one is actually in listening skills. If you switch that on its head and actually listen significantly more than you're talking or communicating, you will pick up on the nuances that become really important for creating change and interventions. And one of my colleagues once sort of said, and I think this comes from Bill Torbert's work, inquiry over advocacy is significantly more powerful. You know, if you're inquiring and asking questions, you will elicit much more information than if you're advocating a position. Because usually if you're advocating a position, you actually just get someone's backup and create resistance. So if you can spin it into inquiry, you can actually start drawing out what's important to them, what's important for you. And then from that, the potential collaboration can spark. Final one then, acting and enabling change. So this is actually putting stuff into that action. And there's things like creativity and optimism are all really important to make these happen. But I think what also becomes really important within this is courage and perseverance. It's never going to be an easy road trying to create the sort of change we need. And so you need that courage and perseverance to really keep pushing, to keep going, to try again, and to be brave in your interventions. You know, as someone once said to me, he says, well, what's the worst that could happen? You know, and at the time it was like, well, they could sack me. And it was just like, okay, you know, and at the time I was thinking about moving on anyway. So they were like, what's the worst? They could sack you? Well, you want to go anyway. And actually what was really interesting is that the more provocative I got, the more people would listen to me and want my support on delivering change. Because often in big corporates, there's maybe a culture of fear or not wanting to rock the boat, not wanting to fall out of line. And so often if you're provocative and speak your truth, you're saying stuff that other people are not prepared to say, but the senior leadership wants to or need to hear. And so often it's actually welcome when you think it's not going to be. So courage and perseverance, I think, are key ones from the acting perspective. Of those lists that sit within the IDG, I think they're all really valid, but there would be one that's not on there that I would add. And I'm going to, with humility, just offer an additional one. And I think what's missing is opportunism. Okay, we need to be aware to opportunities that arise that are not planned for. And we need to take advantage of them when they come. You know, it could be seen as, you know, lighting many, many fires to see which ones catch. And then you follow the bigger fires because you don't know where your interventions are going to be successful. So create lots of interventions, identify which ones seem to be gaining traction, and then pursue those further. And I think linked to that as well is go with the path of least resistance. You know, if something's too hard, it probably is. So try something easier, particularly in the early days when you're a small team and you're trying to gain momentum and trust. It's easier to go where the energy is until you can get that momentum going, and then you can start building and picking up some of the challenges. So I would add, and I bundle those all into that sort of opportunism, and I would throw that into there somewhere as well as part of those skill sets.
Thanks, Rich, for guiding us through the inner development goals and for the addition of opportunism. There's a lot of information there. It's a lot to take in, but you'll find a summary of the key points, links to some of the books Rich mentioned, and to the inner development goals in the show notes at realize.earth108. In the next episode, Rich will be talking about how you can get started developing your sustainability team. If you'd like to discuss any of the issues raised in the podcast, or to ask any questions about leadership for sustainability, you're in luck. We're about to launch a series of events where you can join us to do exactly that. To make sure you don't miss the details, and to get notified when a new episode comes out, sign up for our newsletter at realize.earth. I'm Osbert Lancaster, and I hope this episode of Leadership for Sustainability will help you lead on sustainability in your organisation. You'll find additional resources, masterclasses, and programs on our website at realize.earth. That's realize with an S. What you're doing is so important, now more than ever. Keep up the good work, and be sure to look after yourself. Bye for now.